Hi, everybody. We're back with another episode of Meg and Jens. It's been a while since we did a show together because we've been traveling. It was very busy looking at houses in Canada and stuff like that. So we're back and we're going to do a special episode today, a little bit off the norm of what we normally do. And it's about Ozzy Osbourne because he passed away 2 days ago. And, I'm a huge fan. Meg's also a fan. So we're going to talk about the astrology of Ozzy Osbourne. But before we continue, I just want to present to the viewers my book, A World in Transition. It's about, we're not going to talk as much conspiracy today, a little bit maybe. But I have a book that talks about, the conspiracy, both the spiritual, the metaphysical, and the real 3D side. So the book starts off with the 3D aspect and then moves into the spiritual aspects. So if you're interested, check that out. And what you have got going on, Nick?
We've always got so much going on, Yensi, but right now, Sunny from Pluto and I have a new Jupiter in Cancer Lucky Charms collection over at thescorplingshop.com, our crystal and astrology boutique. So we've handpicked special Christies that are in alignment to help unlock the blessings of this Jupiter in Cancer transit. So if you'd like to check that out, you can go to thescorplingshop.com and the link is in the description box below.
That's cool. So how are you feeling, Meg? How's it? I've heard there's lots of technical issues. Like it's a Mercury retrograde.
It has been, ever since Mercury went retrograde, literally nonstop. Every single astrology reading I've done this past week, there's been a technical issue. There's been schedule changes. There's been a lot of deaths going on. We'll talk about the collective astrology as well, how that ties into that. So I'm definitely feeling it and just taking it moment by moment, not forcing anything and seeing what the Mercury retrograde has to offer us. So I'm good.
Yeah. So I haven't been feeling this Mercury retrograde a lot. I'm going to touch wood, but it's been going pretty well for me. So let's talk about Ozzy first a little bit about his music. I'm an absolute fan. I've gone into Ozzy. I did the whole story. I'm not going to repeat myself because I did my whole story also on the Expanding Consciousness show I host. But I got into Ozzy like at 17 years old, and I was immediately hooked. He has amazing music. Not only his Black Sabbath music, which came first, but also his solo career. He had a very successful solo career. I'm a huge fan. I know you like his music too, Meg. Like, what did you generally think about his music? What did you like, and what did you maybe not like about his music? Just to give me a little bit of information on that.
Well, I love Black Sabbath. I love Ozzy Osbourne. I love all of his music. I think he's one of my most favorite musicians. And ever since, for some reason, I attract heavy metal boyfriends my whole life. And I now have a heavy metal husband, you, Yensi. And I always liked Ozzy and I always liked the Osbournes and his family too. For those of you who don't know, I'm also a paranormal investigator. So I love Jack Osbourne. He's a professional paranormal investigator, one of Ozzy's sons. And I've watched all his shows and stuff. So it wasn't until I got with you about 5 years ago that got even more into the Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, because you play it a lot. He's your most favorite. Would you say he's your most favorite musician or one of the most favorites?
One of the most favorite, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So definitely feels like a very big loss for the music community, for the whole world. And it's weird because I was telling you yesterday that there's a part of me that feels like he's not dead. I'm not saying he's not dead. It just feels kind of surreal. It feels kind of unreal that we no longer have Ozzy Osbourne, who had such a big impact on arts, culture, music. Black Sabbath basically created heavy metal. So it's kind of weird that we don't have him here anymore. He was a pioneer and an innovator. And I know everybody has different opinions on Ozzy. Some people think he's like a Satanist and he's evil and he's part of the Illuminati and stuff like that. But I personally don't get that vibe from him or his family. So I actually think he brought a lot of light to the world.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit deeper about that. So I want to touch on that subject of Satanism, and also want to give my opinion on that. But also I want to hark back to what you're saying about the music. They basically invented metal, and it's going to be so weird that Ozzy's. When I listen to his music now, it's going to be different because this is. I don't know the Ozzy personally, obviously, and obviously he was, I don't want to idolize. I appreciate his musicianship. I don't want to idolize his character in a way that it's like, unhealthy, because I know he was a flawed human being like all of us. He had immense talent, but, he was also a flawed human being. He had his faults, he did crazy stuff when he was on drugs. He cheated on Sharon sometimes. I mean, we got to say the truth. And, sometimes Sharon didn't mind if he didn't know their name. That's what she said, basically. But sometimes, she was very jealous. And, and he was probably not an easy man to live with because of his drugs and substance abuse. So he was a flawed person. But then comes, the allegations of Satanism. And, as I posted and also on my social media, a minority, very minority of people were saying like he's a Satanist and stuff. And yes, he has the pictures where he goes like with the one eye, which they call the one eye club. But honestly, for me, to call somebody a Satanist or to say that somebody is involved with the elites, of which, I talk about in my work and in my book, I need to have something more than just pictures like this, right? I mean, it can be a pointer, but if I look at Ozzy's career, they were just four poor guys with Black Sabbath from Birmingham, that made it big. They came from poor, and yes, Ozzy did some crazy stuff. Like there's that story where he bit the head of a bat because he thought it was a rubber bat, in his own words. But then he also bit the head of a pigeon when he was totally crazy high on drugs. And they had, I'm not making excuses for them, but he worked like in butcher shops and in butcher factories when he was young, because they were poor and they had to get jobs anywhere. So he was desensitized to a lot of that, blood and violence because of working in butchers. So I'm not making excuses for him, but the allegations of the Satanism, I need something more than that, because when you look at true artists who truly support the agenda, of which I can think of a few that are really like sellouts, and I'm just going to name them. I think Bono is a sellout because he like sides with George Bush. He sells, he sells the agenda. Ozzy never really sold the agenda of like climate change, of transhumanism, because if you look at the artists that are really owned, they are owned by the cult, right? They promote transhumanism. Look at the artists who promote transhumanism even now. Because if you're owned by the cult, you're always going to promote what they want, like the war in Ukraine, like Bruce Springsteen promoting the war in Ukraine. And it seems like he didn't like it. It seems like he was really, I got to do this. So I'm not saying Bruce Springsteen is part of the club, or in the end, I don't know. But those are more pointers of being part of the club than I see Ozzy having pointers of being part of the club. So, also, his son is pretty awake as a conspiracy theorist. Sloan Bella, for example, is friends with Zakk Wylde and has met Ozzy on several occasions. And Sloan Bella really speaks out against the elites and is a very good psychic. And if Ozzy would have been a part of a really satanic family, as there are some families, I think a lot of more people would have spoken out about that and would have picked up on that, as is with the case with some other artists. So personally, of course, we never know unless we have a camera 24/7 on a person, right? But personally, I don't feel that with Ozzy, and I feel that he's genuine. And I'm going to play a clip here before we start going into the astrology of the 80s, where the allegations of like Satanism were brought up against him, and this is what he's saying. So let's play that clip here.
Yeah, I know that your lyrics are less.
And I see here. Wait, let me do it again because I think there was another. Let's do it again.
Okay. Yeah, I know that your lyrics are less excessive than groups like Slayer or Venom or Iron Maiden or some of the others, but still, for some reason, maybe it's because you've been around for so long, I see tattoos of your name on some of these, teenage devil worshippers' arms. Wherever I see devil graffiti and satanic graffiti, I see your name also. Do you feel a sense of responsibility, Oz?
The only responsibility I feel is the fact that I'm a true musician in what I play. I don't want to make anybody start doing all this devil worship crap, because that's not my intention. Although I have sang on a few songs about the devil, that's about it. I don't want anyone to harm themselves.
What about the issue of responsibility? What about the whole thing about guilt? Do you feel responsible?
I don't feel guilty. I feel kind of persecuted by everybody because I'm not a bad guy. My intentions are not to harm anyone. In fact, it's directly the opposite. Like when people come to my concerts, I want them to have a good, fun evening out, And it seems to me that a lot of people judge the book by the cover more. So they write things about me, or they don't even know what they're talking about, So,
and that's also what I felt. I saw Ozzy a few times live, and I never felt, any weird satanic things going on, as maybe have seen with some other artists. It was just about fun, crazy train, like just rock and roll and having fun. So, with that being said, is there anything you want to add to that, Mick? Or
Yeah, definitely. A couple things. I also got to see Ozzy, I think, once. I never saw Ozzy Osbourne perform in concert with Zakk Wylde, the solo music. I would have loved to have seen that, but I did see Black Sabbath on their final tour when they did come to Toronto, and it was absolutely amazing. I went with some family members. But I just want to add too, I think it is important for us to call out when there's obviously satanic things or dark arts things being shown to us through music or movies or TV. I can understand and I can sympathize why there's a lot of people out there, and everybody has the right to have whatever freaking belief you want to have. I can understand why there's a lot of people that can just look at Ozzy at face value and go, oh my God, why do you guys like him? Why are you guys supporting him? He's obviously a Satanist, because we've had so much satanic energy being thrown at us in our face. So I understand why there's a lot of people that can say that and they have that view. But to me, there's a difference in the energy when I hear Ozzy talk, when I listen to his singing voice, when I listen to his music. There's something very light. Actually, there's a transmutation of the darkness. One of the things about heavy metal and heavy music, and I was saying this to Jens yesterday, is I think it's actually a very healthy way for us to express anger and to express our shadow side. I've listened to punk music ever since I was 13 years old. Jens is really into heavy metal. I'm really into punk. I love metal too and all kinds of rock, but punk music, which is also an aggressive form of music, has helped me, express my anger, has helped me, get through life. And it's not because we're negative people that we're into these art forms. It's just a way of expression of our emotions and our feelings, I think, in a healthy, constructive way. And also, are you paused, Yancy? Can you hear me? Are you paused? Okay, sorry, you look paused for a moment. Also, so I think metal music, horror rock, other than like black metal, some black metal is actually purely satanic. Okay, let's be honest about that. There are forms of metal that are satanic, so we're not naive to that. But most of it is just expressions of the dark side, which is a very repressed aspect. We get repressed in modern society to not be honest about issues we have from our shadow side, and then we can act out on those in very unconscious ways, right? Can you hear the vacuum in the background behind me?
I don't hear a vacuum, no.
Okay, good. Sorry, you guys. Mercury retrograde, we got a vacuum going on behind me. I also want to mention, from my perspective, there's a difference between bands like Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, Ghost, these bands that have a horror element that are very blatant, in your face, being theatrical. They're being theatrical with the horror genre. Whereas we have pop stars and artists today that they're not being out in the open about horror. They're doing it in a very sneaky way, and they're literally doing rituals right in front of us. That is satanic. If you pay attention to the symbolism, if you pay attention to the words, the whole geometry of what they're doing. So with Ozzy, it's theater, and he's talked about that, right? Alice Cooper also talks about that. Marilyn Manson talks about that. It's their art form. They're not Satanists. They're not dark people. They're playing a character and they're expressing themselves. And I think there's a big difference between that and what we're seeing now in a lot of pop music or mainstream music today, where there's obviously something weird going on, where people are having devil symbols behind them, and they're wearing red and black, and they're literally speaking about, the devil. And I don't know, there's just a different energy. I don't know if I'm expressing this in an eloquent enough way. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I agree fully with you. I agree fully with you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to say.
And actually, what I want to bring up also, and let me just quickly bring this up here, is about the Beatles, because the Beatles also did an album cover once that was like pretty graphic and shocking. And I'm just going to see if I can quickly save it to my computer here, because I really want to show it and critique it, because it really fits with what you're saying. So I'm going to upload it now. I think I have it here. Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever heard about the Butcher album cover from the Beatles, this one.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. That's weird.
So it is weird. So, this is, again, like some people saying the Beatles were also involved and stuff like that. And, sometimes it's never black or white. Sometimes there can be some, people trying to involve themselves, or maybe certain band members. We see everything as like purely black or white, but sometimes it's not always the case. And like, for example, with the Beatles covers, this is as if people see this, like they were, they were Satanists. But, if you hear the backstory about this, and this is, of course, they can be lying about this, but so the backstory goes that John Lennon actually chose this cover because he wanted to, it was like a form of protest because in the American market, their albums were butchered and they were like cut and pasted and they didn't like that. So the dolls and the meat, the butcher meat that you see is like a protest form because that their albums were butchered and they were being used as puppets by the music industry. And John Lennon came up with this. So this is John Lennon himself that said this. This was his idea. So if you hear that backstory, it's maybe not that satanic. Maybe it's because John Lennon wasn't like an artist, and he spoke out against the elites, right? John Lennon was killed by Mark Chapman, which was all the evidence points to that he was a mind-controlled like Manchurian candidate by the CIA because they wanted him dead because he was starting basically a revolution. He was, there's all these videos of John Lennon speaking out against, we're living in a crazy world and the elites are crazy, and then they killed him. So. And they said this was John Lennon's idea. So if this is true, this is a whole other thing. So people are quick to say, oh, it's satanic, but maybe there's another story behind it. Just like you said, like with these bands, they got to sell records. It's theatrical because they know that stuff sells, right? So it's not as satanic as is insidiously satanic as some other bands, as you said, Meg.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to touch on this, and to bring some nuance to this because it's very easy to just say, it's satanic. We got to keep our balance, in my opinion, and our grounding also. And it's very, very easy to, you can find pictures of me doing the horn signs when I was in my 20s, playing in a metal band, going like this, and then people say, oh, he's satanic, So we got to be careful with that also.
There's a bunch of people out there that think we're Satanists because there's pictures of us online at concerts, rocking out and doing all that.
I think it's a very, very minority of people. It's only a few, but they sometimes have loud voices. Yeah. All right. So are we ready to go into the astrology of Ozzy's chart?
Yeah. Was there another clip that you wanted to play? I see there's another clip.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, actually, yeah, we can play it. So also about Ozzy's, he wasn't perfect. He, as far as I know, for example, he took the what they put in your arm, 5 years ago. Like Eric Clapton took it too, right? But Eric Clapton then spoke out against it, and then Eric Clapton, made a song like "Stop the Lockdowns" and all that stuff.
Right.
Stop the craziness. So I really love Eric Clapton, even though he also took it because he was naive, and maybe Ozzy was naive too. Because he was like a little bit of a hypochondriac. If you read his bio, he was very like, although he did some dirty and crazy stuff, he was very like afraid of germs and stuff like that. And some people have that. So, it's easy to judge people. And even Eric Clapton, took it, but still he spoke out. So, we don't, like we conspiracy theorists, we sometimes want people to be exactly think and act like us, because if you're not the same, and if you don't think this about the Japs, and if you don't think this about that, then you're no good. But we gotta let that go, because there's a variety of people out there that thinks differently. But I want to show his like political stance. He and his son. This is an interview with his son. So this is from his show Son, who talks Jack, who talks in conspiracies. This is Ozzy Osbourne talking about the former prime minister. What's his name?
Tony Blair.
Tony Blair. So he wasn't a fan of politicians. I mean, they made a song with Black Sabbath called War Pigs, about the war pigs, the politicians and the generals who are war pigs. So let me play that clip here.
When the Iraq war started going, I thought he was going to go to me and say, you could do very good for the country by doing a song or something for the troops. He comes up to me and he goes, do you know I was once in a band? I'm like, yeah, I heard the fucking media. And he goes, but I couldn't quite get the chords to Iron Man. I'm like, is that all you've got to fucking say? We vote for these people in, and they never seem to pull off all the shit that promises to get in.
So, I like what I hear here. I like what I hear. And the funniest thing about this clip is that Tony Blair supposedly was in a band but couldn't play Iron Man, and Iron Man is like one of the easiest riffs. So Tony Blair can't really play guitar.
Yeah. Crazy.
All right, so well, I guess we're ready to go into the astrology of it.
Yeah, for sure. So let me bring up Ozzy's birth chart. Now, what's interesting, and I've never seen this with anybody else online, there seems to be two different potentials of Ozzy's birth time. So there is a birth time of 6 a.m., which would make him a Scorpio rising, which to me makes a lot of freaking sense. And then there's also a 10 a.m. option, which would make him a Capricorn rising. Ozzy does have a lot of Capricorn chart, his moon, his Mars, his Jupiter. But, the rising sign in astrology represents how we look, right? Our expression, how we physically look, how we come off to others. And I mean, this is the Prince of Darkness, the self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness. So to me, that's a total Scorpio rising. And I think there's other things that make sense to that as well. So some of you guys may disagree with me out there, but I'm going to go with the 6 a.m. chart for Ozzy because I think it makes the most sense. He was born on December 3rd, 1948 in the UK. So very interesting. Ozzy is a Sagittarius sun, Capricorn moon, either Scorpio or Capricorn rising. I think he is a Scorpio rising. And, a lot of Saggies out there are musicians, rock and roll musicians, rock and roll singers, rock and roll guitarists. A lot of rock and rollers are Sagittarius. The list is so long. Ozzy Osbourne, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix. Oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. Like there's so many people that are rock and roll musicians that are Sagittarius or have prominent Sagittarius influence. Yenzi, you're a guitarist. You were in a heavy metal band and you're a Sagittarius with the Sagittarius stellium. So Sagittarius, it's interesting because it's not one of the signs that rules music, but Sagittarius rules freedom, right? Freedom and the higher perspective. And rock and roll music is very much about freedom and unique self-expression. So I think that's why a lot of Saggies are attracted to being rock and roll musicians, because it's one of those kind of professions in the modern day where you can maybe feel like you're really free outside of the matrix system and you can express your higher concepts, be creative in that way. Sagittarians are also known for, they love to party. Okay, Sagittarians love to party. A lot of them love alcohol, drugs, things that open and bend the mind. Anything you want to say about that, Yenzi, being a Sagittarius?
I would say at a certain point in my life when I was young, that influence definitely was there.
That was the big influence, yeah. And of course, Ozzy, we know, alcoholic, addict in general. It's a miracle that he survived as long as he did. And I've heard him say that a few times, right? So he really went into bending his mind, altering his consciousness with drugs and alcohol. Makes sense as a Sagittarius with also his Mercury and Chiron in Sagittarius as well. He does have a Capricorn degree on his sun, 10-degree Sagittarius sun. So, Capricorn is the sign of hard work and success and to be highly successful at some point in life. But it doesn't come easy. It comes through trials and tribulations. So, of course, he became one of the biggest rock stars of all time, the godfather of heavy metal with the other members of Black Sabbath. But like you were saying, Yenzi, he came from a very poor background. It didn't just come to him easily. He worked at butchers, he worked in factories, he came from a very poor background. They had to work very hard to get to their success, right? So that's very Capricorn. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, that's true. I want to interject a little story here of Black Sabbath because they were so driven, they worked so hard at getting there. Tony Iommi even said they had like a little van, and because their music was so new, they didn't get any bookings. So what they would do is they would go to a concert. They knew what was happening. They would park outside the venue in the chance that if any band would cancel, their band would be there. They would go to the organizers and say, look, we are your replacement band. And so they did that. And that's how they got into the circuit. So they really worked hard at it. They put all in,
That is some Capricorn shit right there. I did not know that. That is so they worked their freaking asses off. to get to where they are. And the truth is, you guys, that yes, there is luck that can happen in life and people can get lucky breaks. But the truth is that if you want to be the top of the top, if you want to be Capricorn and you want to be really successful, you're going to have to work your freaking ass off. Okay. That doesn't come for free, right? So Ozzy and Black Sabbath, they're an example of that. He's got Moon in Capricorn, Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Capricorn. So a Sagittarius stellium, which is stellium, for those of you guys who don't know, is when we have 3 or more planets in the same sign or house. Also a Capricorn stellium. Now, it's interesting, and I have my Moon in Capricorn as well. Moon and Capricorns are very hard workers and can even be workaholics, and they can be workhorses. Okay. And if you think about Ozzy Osbourne, even though nobody's perfect, he was definitely not perfect. He had issues with drug and alcohol. And I don't want to, did he have a sex addiction at one point, or did he just have affairs on Sharon?
I don't know, but as any rock musician, like this is what happens, and this is what a lot of rock stars go through, because most of them are not famous, and then they suddenly get famous. The women get thrown at them.
Yeah,
it's basically like having a sex addiction, I think.
Right. So yeah, I don't want to say he's a sex addict if he's not, but I've heard him say that he's just an addict in general. And can be many different ways that is expressed. Moon in Capricorn is challenging for processing your own emotions. So it's very interesting because he does have his Moon in square to Neptune, which makes him a very sensitive soul, very Neptunian, Piscean, actually, even though he doesn't have anything in Pisces other than his Black Moon Lilith, that is a placement. With Moon in square to Neptune, he's very sensitive. He's, insecure. He talked about that. Sharon talked about that. He had major confidence issues throughout life, which is kind of crazy because he's like Ozzy Osbourne, right? But there's even clips of him on YouTube and different documentaries where he's crying. And he's like, fuck off, don't film me right now. Because he would cry very easily. He was very sensitive. He had stage fright, which you wouldn't expect from someone like him. But Moon and Capricorn people with a lot of Capricorn, they can be very hard on themselves, perfectionistic, workaholic. So yeah, that Moon square Neptune also shows like possible issues with alcohol, drugs, really high sensitivity. Really cool that his Moon in Capricorn also sextile Venus. And of course, when you've got the Moon in sextile to Venus, Venus rules women. The Moon also rules women. So when you've got those two in positive aspect, you can have very beneficial, positive relationships with women. And when you think about a significant woman to Ozzy, who do you think about? Sharon, right? So Sharon literally, saved his life multiple times. Sharon Osbourne believed in him when Ozzy Osbourne got kicked out of Black Sabbath. So for those of you guys who don't know, Ozzy Osbourne got kicked out of Black Sabbath, right? And then he thought, oh my God, I'm a loser. My life is over. He was having wasn't he like homeless at one point, or he was crazy on drugs and alcohol when he got kicked out of Black Sabbath? Like he was really in a not good place.
Yeah, he wasn't homeless, but he was like living in he had earned enough money by then. He was like living in a hotel room, not coming out of his hotel room, feeling sorry for himself. Also, he admitted in his biography, drinking and being on drugs the whole time. And actually, Sharon pulled it out. Sharon saw his potential. Sharon was the daughter of, I think, Don Arden, who was a really hard businessman in the music industry. She knew her way around, and she said to Ozzy, "Come on, I know you have the talent. Let's do it." So she really helped Ozzy. She helped kickstart Ozzy's solo career.
Yeah, definitely. So beautiful that he had that marriage, beautiful marriage. Even though, he was born. Look at this, with his Venus in Scorpio at 8 degrees, a Scorpio degree, and conjunct his South Node. So very volatile, intense relationships, even though, there is a beautiful marriage or connection that they will have when you have Venus in sextile to the Moon usually. But him and Sharon, this is a astrologically past life relationship where they know each other on a very, very deep level. And that kind of makes sense when you think about Sharon, because if you think about just in a common sense way, what woman would put up with that shit for so long, right? Would put up with the cheating, would put up with, Ozzy at one point when he was completely out of it on drugs or alcohol, tried to kill Sharon one time. They've spoken about that publicly. Did you ever hear about that, Yancy?
Yeah, he was totally high on drugs, and it was said, I think, like sometimes, I think there was sometimes when people like black out and spirits enter them.
Yeah.
And no, of course, not to take responsibility away of what Ozzy did, but Sharon said that he said Ozzy said to her, "We have decided that you have to go," and he tried to like strangle her a little bit.
Oh my God.
So it wasn't like a full blown, assassination attempt with a knife and stuff, but yeah, if people who really abuse drugs to the level of that Ozzy did, it can create like a form of possession, a temporary possession where spirits can enter you. Not saying that Ozzy didn't do it, of course. Responsibility is also always on the person itself, right? But he had a crazy life,
Absolutely crazy life. And that's why, speaking of crazy life, I do think he is a Scorpio rising. I think that makes sense. If 6 a.m. is the right time, he would be an 8-degree Scorpio rising, which can make sense to me because not only would being a Scorpio rising make sense with him being the Prince of Darkness. Scorpio is the sign that rules the dark side of life. Intensity, and he definitely had a very intense life. But 18 degrees is a Virgo degree. Virgo rules with disease, health issues, and Ozzy did have health issues throughout his whole life, including a very rare form of Parkinson's, right? And later on in his life, the past 5 or 6 years, or maybe even longer than that, you guys, Ozzy was really struggling with his health big time. He had, I think, a fall and then went for a surgery and then had a doctor that completely fucked up the surgery, and he was never the same since. So that is something when we see 18 degrees in Nicholas Stoyanovic's degree theory, it is actually the degree of misfortune, which can usually have to do with health. So that kind of makes sense if he is exactly 18 degrees Scorpio rising. We've also got his South Node in the sign of Scorpio. Now, the South Node represents the most recent past lives. So with Ozzy having South Node in Scorpio, probably in the 12th house, he's coming from very intense recent past lives that are some of the most like intense life experiences, dark life experiences you can possibly have, where now in this life, his North Node, what's in alignment for him to embrace is Taurus. And I really think that he succeeded in his purpose in his North Node, which literally shows in his chart, he came from a really dark place on the soul level, very intense experiences that he transmuted into Taurus, into light, beauty, life, music. Taurus is music, singers, art. So he went through a lot of darkness, and he even went through that in this life. We also express the South Node in this life, but we have the invitation, will we step into the North Node? So I think he definitely did that. Do you think that he was successful in that, Yancy?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how much people he inspired with his music, with his creations, and indeed, if the patterns of the past life carry over in this current life, his drugs, his substance abuse, his drug abuse, his own demons were part of that, right? But towards the end of her life, I think he definitely conquered that for the most part, because he went to rehab. He didn't drink anymore in the later years. I saw clips where he was offered like on Jack and Ozzy's tour, and then people offered him, "Oh, Ozzy, do you want to have a drink with me?" Fans that want to have a drink with him, they want to toast with Ozzy, but he said, "No, I can't do it anymore." So I think he definitely conquered those demons, those drugs and alcohol demons. Yeah.
And whether you like it or not, okay, some of you guys might not be happy with us saying this, Ozzy brought a lot of light to the world through his music, which is Taurus, okay? He with Black Sabbath created that whole heavy metal genre, which has literally saved people's lives. If you know anybody who's a metalhead or into heavy music, it's a very big part of their life, and they're extremely passionate about that and has literally helped them get through very hard times. So Ozzy did bring a lot of light through his music, right? Also interesting with the chart, okay, if he is born around 6 a.m. in the Scorpio rising, that would make his 8th astrological house the Scorpio ruled areas of life, which can actually show us, and this is very creepy for me to say, but how we will die in this lifetime, the eighth house. His eighth house is ruled by Gemini. He's also got Cancer there, and he's got the planet Uranus in his eighth house. Now, I think this could make sense because how did he die? He died literally, 17 days after the final Black Sabbath concert. They did their Back to the Beginning concert in Birmingham and did their final farewell, right? Gemini rules friends, okay? Uranus rules group events, like-minded community that you feel comfortable with, friends. So literally right before he died, he was with his family. The sign of Cancer was there. There was a public statement put out by the family saying, please respect our privacy. Ozzy was surrounded by, Sharon and his kids. So he was with his family, but also in the weeks up preceding his death, there was that farewell concert event, Uranus, with all his friends, all the people that loved him, right? And supported him and were inspired by his music, his band, Black Sabbath. He played with Black Sabbath for the final time. He had all these artists that basically had their career started from him and his legacy. So I feel like that makes sense in the eighth house. Also in the collective astrology, very, very interesting. We're filming this video on the day after the new moon in Leo. We're filming this on Friday, July 25th. And this new moon in Leo that we had on July 24th, 2 days after Ozzy's death was actually within the portal of this new moon in Leo. Leo rules rock stars, famous people, people in the limelight. And this new moon was exactly opposite Pluto, the planet of death, people dying. And within the portal of this new moon in Leo so far, Ozzy Osbourne passed away. The next day we had an 80s actor, I'm forgetting his name, you guys, sorry, but an actor from the Cosby Show called Malcolm. I'm forgetting his last name. And then yesterday on the new moon in Leo, Hulk Hogan passed away. Also, there was a Dutch musician. I sent it to you, Yenzi. I don't know if you saw. There was a significant Dutch musician who wrote the Twilight Zone song that also passed away. So in the collective astrology, Sun in opposition to Pluto, this is powerful people passing away. In Ozzy's personal transits, I do think this Scorpio rising chart makes sense because the moon was transiting over his eighth house on that day, house of death. Okay. He did have his chart ruler Scorpio as Pluto as a Scorpio rising in very strong aspects to the outermost planets, positive aspects to the outermost planets. And what I actually feel when I was looking at his astrology, preparing for today's video, is he was complete. I'm getting that psychically. This isn't a negative death. There doesn't feel like, and let me know what you think, Yenzi. It doesn't feel like he was killed. There was negativity. There's something bad about it. I'm really getting this sense of full circle moment. They did the Back to the Beginning concert. His health has been really not in a good place for years and years and years. His passion in life was performing and sharing heavy music. He couldn't do that anymore. He had to be strapped into a chair to be able to do that concert. You could see him, he was having so much fun in the concert, but he so wanted to get up and dance around and jump around, right? It felt like he was complete. It feels like he did his mission and he was very successful in that. And it was his natural time to go. That's kind of what I get the sense of. Do you also feel that?
Yeah, I also feel it. And I feel like, they say the soul chooses, not only the point of birth astrologically, or can have an influence at it, but also the point of death. And what you're saying, if maybe there are certain astrological exit points where it is more, conducive for the soul to let go of the body. And I feel the same thing, is that, it's not a coincidence. For people would call it a coincidence, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he died so soon after his final show. Because I think for his soul, it was complete. Like you say, it was done. It was over. He had his last goodbye, in Birmingham, where they're from. To his fans, and that was it, and then he I think his soul chose to go. And I want to go back also to what you said about that he brought a lot of light, although he had like that dark image of the Prince of Darkness. It is true because he and the other Black Sabbath members spawned the genre that is so therapeutic to so many people, because heavy metal, in my opinion, is one of the most therapeutic forms of music. Now, the heavy metal fans that are watching this will surely understand what I'm saying. Maybe other people will understand less so. But if you're a heavy metal fan, it is one of the most therapeutic forms of music. So I truly believe that his music, and not only his music, but the music he helped spawn, really helped a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And we're all different, right? Like if there's people that aren't into heavy music, there's nothing wrong with that. We're all unique and different, but there's a lot of people that they do resonate with it, and it has really helped them in this lifetime. Last thing that I want to mention astrologically is also looking at his solar return chart. So his birthday chart from his previous birthday. I don't know where he was located. I don't have his exact time of birth, but his birthday was the day after a new moon in Sagittarius. So that's, very lucky, new moon in Sagittarius. And having a birthday within the portal of a new moon in Sagittarius can help you fulfill your dreams, have luck on your side. I'm sure it wasn't easy for him and Sharon to organize this back to the beginning concert. And I feel like with his solar return, having that new moon influence, it really helped put that together. I mean, if you looked at the lineup of that, they had Metallica, Tool, who else did they have there? Billy Corgan, Ghost, was Alice Cooper there? Steven Tyler was there. I don't think Alice Cooper was there.
I don't know if Alice Cooper was there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm paused. 1 second, you guys. Am I still paused?
Yeah, let me remove you and add you again, because when you do the thumbs up thing, it pauses for some reason. Okay, you're back. Can you change your camera? Can you reconfigure your camera?
Let me reconfigure my camera. 1 second.
Just choose.
Okay, I'm back.
You can choose the other camera again. It will work again normally.
Shoot, is it not going to work? Oh, well, I'll just use my old camera. Okay, I'll just go back to the old camera. Sorry, you guys. Talking about his solar return. So it was within the influence of a new moon in Sag. If you think about it, it just seems kind of perfect how the concert played out and was orchestrated, right? It was like they had divine help on their side, very Sagittarian. Also in the solar return, Pluto, 0 degrees of Aquarius, the planet of death and transformation and completion at its most critical degree. So to have Pluto 0 degrees, in a solar return is you're going to have a very transformational year, maybe even die if that is the completion point, right? If you are done, you're going to have a huge, powerful year. Also, Sun square Saturn and Neptune square Moon are indicators of possible crossing over. So it literally showed up once again. The astrology is real.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I think we're through with the astrology. I mean, this is longer than I expected it. I think we've gotten a lot of interesting information and brought up a lot of interesting topics. Is there anything else you want to add before we go, Meg?
Just want to say thank you to Ozzy. Love you, and see you on the other side, as he says in his song.
Yeah, same for me. That's an amazing song. See you on the other. It's one of his lesser known songs, but it's a really great song. And he has so many great songs. Like, the first song I've heard of him was Diary of a Madman. That beautiful acoustic intro by his guitarist Randy Rhoads. And I mean, he's got, and also a very inspirational song is also I Just Want You.
Oh,
like, where he sings like, there are no unlovable, like he just lists up, there are no unwinnable wars. It's very inspirational, very positive, actually, if you listen to the lyrics. It's one of my favorites, more modern songs, because it's from the 90s. It's not one of his like old songs. It's got like more modern production. It's a really great song. So that's it for this show, people. So I think next week we will be back with another show of me and Meg. Mm-hmm. So thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to check out my book, and forget to check out the crystals from Sunny and Meg from the Scorpion Shop. So you got my book, A World in Transition, and the crystals. What was it called again, Meg? I forgot the name.
Answer terms. Yeah.
So check them out too on the scorpionshop.com. So thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next week in another episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.